Konnichiwa, Sosto, Gimo, Kanzo Yokoso. If you didn't understand what I just said, fair enough, you probably don't speak Japanese. Directly behind me is the Cairns International Terminal, where I will shortly be departing. As of this video's release, the aircraft that I'm about to fly on, specifically the routes that I'm about to fly on, will no longer exist. Today I'll be flying with Virgin Australia upwards to Tokyo Haneda on a 737 MAX 8. To say that I was excited for this flight would be a massive understatement, as this particular route has been on my bucket list ever since it was unveiled to the public back in December of 2022. Virgin Australia is no stranger to my YouTube channel, being the airline of choice for my first ever video. Virgin has existed long before that video, however, being around since the early 2000s and starting out under a completely different name, that being Virgin Blue. It has been well known for many years that the Australian aviation market is one of the toughest and most competitive areas to operate in, which has been most evident with the likes of Bonza entering voluntary administration back in April of last year. This was nearly such the case for Virgin when the COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020, leaving them on the verge of bankruptcy. However, thanks to private equity Bain Capital, the airline survived and is now thriving on a significantly more reduced service. Unfortunately, this meant the axing of some of my favourite parts about the old airline, that being the ATR 72, 777 and A330s, which were super wild to see back at Terminal 2. I'll talk a little bit more about the airline later, but for now, it's time to check in. The Cairns International Terminal is a relatively small terminal, handling only a few international flights a day, with Virgin being only one of these flights. As such, there are only 3 counters available for check-in, 1 for priority customers, such as those in business, and 2 for economy class. All 3 are on the far left-hand side of the building, and are fairly isolated. The check-in experience could not have been easier, as I was the only person checking in. This was a little bit surprising to me. With less than 2 hours until boarding, I expected a queue to be well established. With my bag on its way to Japan, next up was security and immigration, which conveniently isn't that far away, being located up the stairs in the center of the building and off to the right. You might be asking yourself, why does this route even exist in the first place, when you could very easily catch a much more comfy and frankly cheaper flight with Jetstar or from any one of the major cities? After a bit of restructuring and management doing their thing post-COVID, nearly the entire Virgin International route network was scrapped, excluding the likes of Bali, Queenstown and a few Pacific Island nations. However, one key slot that Virgin had beforehand was an extremely valuable Haneda airport slot, to which Virgin were not keen on getting rid of. But with the downgrade of their fleet to only the 737 family, no aircraft met the distance requirements to be able to reach Haneda Airport from Australia. This was until the Boeing 737 MAX came along. And putting it simply, the MAX could reach Haneda from Cairns, so Virgin put those aircraft to work after pressure from Haneda officials. Post-security is the duty-free shopping area, which has the usual oversized chocolates, cheap booze, luxury watches and perfumes. None of which really struck me as interesting today, as nothing was requested by my folks back home. The waiting area itself is fairly large, however I found that there were no single or couple seats, only large benches or 5-seater tables, which made the whole situation a bit awkward, as most couples and singles ended up having to sit on the floor. As is typical for an airport of this size, there are a few cafes around. However, upon looking at their prices, I opted to save my money, rather than spend nearly $10 on a cup of coffee. After getting around an hour of work done, the pre-boarding call was announced, and I proceeded over to the gate for this afternoon's departure. The departure gates are spread across the entire length of the terminal building, and are generally not that far away from the security checkpoint, and as for once, you don't really need to rush for your flight, unless you're late of course. Waiting on stand today is a Boeing 737 MAX 8, registered as Victor Hotel 8 India Charlie. This airframe's construction was completed in August of 2023, being delivered brand new to Virgin the next month, making this aircraft nearly 1.5 years old. Boarding this afternoon commenced at Gate 6 and began with priority and business class customers, and then by row for economy, starting with the back and then moving forward, meaning I was one of the last to board. Virgin Australia's 737 MAX 8s all have the exact same configuration, with 8 business class seats in a 2-2 layout and 168 standard economy class seats in a 3-3 layout. Virgin Australia categorises their economy class seats based on location. Rows 3 to 5, 13 and 14 are Economy X seats with an additional 3 inches of legroom. Rows 6 to 12 are in the preferred seating section and cost slightly more. And rows 15 to 30 are normal seats, which don't really cost anything. For this flight, I shall be seated in 7 Alpha on the port side in the preferred seating section. The economy class seat has 30 inches of pitch and 17 inches of width. There is a standard tray table which folds down from the seat in front and extends towards you. In the seat pocket you'll find a fairly standard safety card, buy on board menu and an air sickness bag. On the back of every seat is a device holder suitable for a phone or tablet. Besides this is a single USB port, and above are individual air vents, reading lights and a single flight attendant call button. Soon we commenced our pushback from Gate 6, 3 minutes ahead of our scheduled departure time.
Crew on doors and cross-check.
Welcome to your Virgin Australia flight. It's wonderful to have you aboard. Keeping you safe is our top priority. So before we take off, please give us your attention as we share important safety information and help us to create a safe and enjoyable flight. 小さなお子様の救命胴衣および予備の救命胴衣をお配りいたします。There are life rafts and signalling devices in marked stowages in the forward and centre of the cabin, which your crew will deploy in an emergency. Cigarettes isn't allowed on board. This includes in the toilets, which have smoke detectors and alarms. You may continue using your...
We taxied to runway 33 via Delta, Charlie 2, Bravo, Bravo 5 and runway 15.
And if you lose your device...
Cabin crew be seated for takeoff.
Now please enjoy this unedited takeoff. After a very long and graceful takeoff, we spun around to the right and left over the Coral Sea and Great Barrier Reef, setting a northerly course for Japan. flight time today is 7 hours and 23 minutes, covering a distance of 3,697 miles or 5,949 kilometers, cruising at 36,000 feet. Once airborne and during our initial right-hand turn, the left-hand side of the aircraft were treated to a near solid hour of stunning visuals of the eastern coast of the Cape York Peninsula. As such, we also flew over the Great Barrier Reef, which, if you are not already aware, is not only the largest reef in the world, stretching nearly 2,500 kilometers up the coastline, but is also by far the most stunning reef in the world. This was then followed by the handing out of Japan's Customs Declaration Card, as well as a drink service, to which I only asked for a cup of water, as hydration on these long flights is key. Virgin Australia offers complimentary entertainment to all passengers on board. However, Wi-Fi connectivity comes at a price for economy passengers. I found there to be a fairly decent selection of films and TV shows. However, I also found out that when connected to the Wi-Fi, every hour or so, an annoying calendar error message would appear, limiting my use of the in-flight entertainment to basically nothing, until I had disconnected from the Wi-Fi and then reconnected, to which it would disappear. This was then shortly followed by the first in-flight service. Because I was a little bit peckish, I decided on a chicken and sun-dried tomato pesto wrap and a can of Sprite with a cup of ice. Both of which I have had before and I am fairly fond of, with the pesto and sun-dried tomatoes being my favourite thing to come out of the Italian cuisine. Shortly after the lunch service was served, we passed directly over the northwest Pacific nation of Papua New Guinea, which I have visited before. Unfortunately today, we did not pass over any of the major cities or villages, but we did pass directly over the Kikori River, which is interestingly one of the most important rivers in the country. Just shy of 2 hours later, we passed directly over the last piece of visible land during daylight hours, which was I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it, atoll, in Micronesia. On board the aircraft are 3 bathrooms, one for business at the forward end of the cabin and 2 at the rear for economy. Inside the bathroom is everything you would typically expect from Virgin, including the scented hand soap and complimentary sanitary items. I must mention that the business class bathroom was heavily policed, as passengers in economy attempted to use the one at the front almost the entire length of the flight. Due to this flight's unique routing, excluding Papua New Guinea, Guam, and the northernmost point of Australia, there was nothing to see, excluding the clouds, water, and sky, as well as the setting sun, which was due to me sitting on the port side of the aircraft. With the sun just disappearing below the horizon, the crew got into action again, preparing for a second round of food. Looking to save myself for the fantastic food awaiting me on the ground, I only opted for something light and, well, new to me, that being the tomato and basil pasta. The crew recommended that I waited at least 15 minutes before indulging, to give the pasta a chance to soak up the hot water that had been poured in. From previous experience, I've learned that this is not enough time, so I waited around 25 minutes, which did the trick, and the pasta turned out to be soft and not mushy at all. Soon we commenced our descent into Tokyo. Due to the lateness of the day, unfortunately there was nothing to be seen outside, except for the starlight, flashing red beacon light on the top of the fuselage, and later on the fantastically lit engine nacelle, which sports Virgin's typical red stripe. Eventually, however, the lights from the southern towns of Tokyo came into view, and as such, the amount of light coming into the cabin only grew. Unfortunately, the last time I was in Japan, I was carrying and using a faulty SD card, to which, if you've seen my previous videos, resulted in all of my GoPro footage being corrupted and unusable. However, such is not the case for today. Now please enjoy this unedited landing.
morning folks, welcome to the world's biggest city, Tokyo. Local time here, 7:51.
After landing, we taxied back to Terminal 3 via Lima 11, Lima, Papa 10 and Papa.
Once we arrive on the platform.
We pulled in onto remote stand 133, 4 minutes ahead of our scheduled arrival time. As I stepped off the aircraft, bracing myself for the cold weather I was about to experience, I thanked the absolutely fantastic crew in Japanese. Prior to stepping off the aircraft, the cabin crew warned the passengers that if they had left any items behind, it would be nearly impossible to retrieve them again, as not only would the entire crew be leaving this flight, the aircraft would also be returning back to Australia in just a few hours' time. Well, let's just say that I feel sorry for the couple travelling in front of me. Before giving my final thoughts, as our aircraft today was parked at a remote stand, a short bus ride was necessary to transport the passengers to the terminal. This gave me a very rare opportunity to not only walk on the apron here at Haneda, but also to get up and close to large foreign wide-body aircraft. So, I've just spent nearly 7.5 hours on a 737. What are my thoughts? Well, let's start from the beginning. The check-in experience was fantastic, taking absolutely no time at all. I wish this were the case all the time, but I suspect that most passengers had either checked in already or were arriving on later arriving flights. The terminal experience was not great, honestly, considering there was barely enough seating. Now granted, most people were actually families, so it does make sense. On board, the seat was, well, it was alright. Most people complain about being on board a narrow-body aircraft for longer than 5 hours, but I personally had no issue with it. The service was great, however, due to the length of the flight, pretty much all food on board was eaten, leaving no hot meals by the 5-hour mark, which wasn't a problem for me, as I managed to get a hot meal just before it all ran out, so I was lucky in this instance. Overall, a pretty decent flight with Virgin, but it was a bizarre one. So, would I recommend you to take this flight? Considering that since this video's upload, the route no longer exists, I can't really recommend it. However, alternatively, would I recommend you to fly with Virgin internationally? To that, I'd say if the price is cheap enough, absolutely, as it was a fantastic way to cross the Pacific Ocean. Just make sure you order your food early, otherwise you'll go hungry. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment and subscribe. Make sure you check out the other videos that I have posted on my YouTube channel. And I have said this before, but I now have a Discord server with the link being found at the top of the description. Also, if you like my videos, please press the notification button next to the subscribe button, as it will notify you every time I post a new video, which happens every Friday at 8 PM Sydney time. And I hope to see you again in the next one. Arigatou gozaimasu. Mata tadai.